The laughter cut through the courtroom like glass breaking. Judge Judy looked up slowly, not at the young woman laughing, but at the designer bag on her table, then at the Cartier bracelet glinting under the lights. "You think this is funny?" the politician's daughter said, still smirking. "My father will—" "Your father," Judge Judy interrupted coldly, "doesn't pay your rent, does he?" Silence. The girl's face froze. Her lawyer grabbed her arm, but too late. Judge Judy held up a single bank statement. $47, last month. She paused, while wearing a $6,000 watch. The smirk vanished. What happened in the next 60 seconds didn't just destroy her case, it exposed everything. The smirk on her face did not just fade, it buckled, collapsing under the weight of a single sheet of paper. Judge Judy did not raise her voice. She did not need to. The bank statement in her hand did all the talking. The courtroom held its breath, the air thick with that strange mix of curiosity and discomfort, the kind that settles when entitlement finally meets consequence. Judge Judy rested the paper on the bench with a deliberate calm, her eyes never leaving the young woman standing across from her. The politician's daughter stood tall at first, chin high, jewelry gleaming like stage lights meant only for her. But the corners of her confidence had begun to fray. The Cartier bracelet that had flexed so boldly when she laughed now hung still, as if even it sensed the shift in power. Judge Judy tapped the edge of the paper once. It was the softest sound in the room, and somehow the loudest. $47, she said quietly. The girl blinked. A single flutter betraying panic she had not yet admitted. Her lawyer leaned in fast, whispering urgently, but she shrugged him off. Arrogance did not like handlers. She straightened her shoulders and attempted a practiced smile, the political kind, all gloss and no truth. "I already said," she began, "it was a temporary—" "No," Judge Judy cut in. "You said you were struggling financially. You said you could not afford to repay the plaintiff for the damages you caused at the luncheon." Her voice remained calm, steady, almost gentle, the exact tone that made the audience tighten in their seats. Truth was quieter than yelling, but it hit harder. Judy lifted her gaze slowly, scanning the girl's outfit with the precision of a surgeon. The designer heels, the tailored blazer, the meticulously applied makeup that belonged more in a press photo than a courtroom. "And yet," she continued, "you are wearing a $6,000 watch." The girl swallowed. Her smirk evaporated completely now, replaced by something sharp and raw in her eyes, fear or anger, it was hard to tell. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. For the first time, silence belonged to her. The plaintiff, standing a few feet away, held her breath too. A small business owner with tired eyes and a stack of photos showing broken decor and damaged equipment, she watched the exchange with a mixture of hope and disbelief. Judge Judy leaned forward, elbows on the bench, the bank statement between her fingers like a piece of evidence she did not need to embellish. "Help me understand," she said. "How does someone with designer accessories and luxury clothing claim poverty when it is time to take responsibility?" The daughter's throat tightened. Her lawyer's hand hovered at her elbow, but she refused to look at him. If she looked away from Judy, she knew she would crumble. The silence stretched. Then Judge Judy placed the bank statement down, gently, almost kindly, and said, "Tell me who paid for that watch." The girl's lips parted, but no answer came. Because the real story, the one she never planned to reveal, was about to unravel. Her chin lifted just a fraction, the smallest attempt to reclaim the arrogance slipping through her fingers. Privilege has a way of trying to rebuild itself, even when the ground beneath it is crumbling. For a moment, the politician's daughter said nothing. Her silence was not humility. It was calculation. She stood straighter, tilted her head, and forced the kind of smile meant to suggest she was above the entire situation. The Cartier bracelet glinted as she tucked her hair behind her ear, a gesture more about display than comfort. "My watch," she began slowly, "was a gift." Judge Judy's expression did not change. "From whom?" The tone was not aggressive. It was clinical, the kind of tone that stripped excuses down to bone. The daughter let out a small laugh, soft and practiced, the kind used in campaign fundraisers and charity galas. "Friends. My family knows a lot of people, Judge." Her lawyer shifted beside her, clearly wishing she would stop talking. But she didn't. People who grew up with microphones instead of limits rarely did. The plaintiff watched with quiet dread, hands clasped together. A woman who worked 2 jobs did not understand this kind of performance. Her world had consequences. This girl's world had safety nets. Judge Judy folded her hands. "So these friends," she said, "also gave you the designer shoes, the handbag, the blazer, all gifts?" "Yes," the daughter said, a bit too quickly. "People like to send things. It's expected." "Expected," Judy repeated, as though tasting the word. Across the courtroom, a few audience members exchanged uneasy glances. The daughter went on, voice gaining momentum. "I mean, when your father is in office—" Her lawyer's hand snapped onto her arm. "Stop!" But Judy already leaned back in her chair, eyes sharpening. "So now we are blaming your father's position for your inability to tell the truth?" The girl's confidence wavered. She had not meant to say that part out loud. Her gaze flicked toward the gallery, searching for familiar faces, allies, cameras, anything that would remind her she was important. Nothing answered. The plaintiff took a small step forward. "Your Honor," she said softly, "may I explain what happened at the luncheon?" Judge Judy nodded. "Please." The plaintiff described the event, an elegant fundraiser where her small catering company had been hired. She spoke about how the daughter arrived late, how she slammed her bag on delicate tables, how she complained loudly about budget food. Her voice was steady, but her hands trembled with the memory. The daughter rolled her eyes, an impulse she could not quiet. "It wasn't that serious," she muttered. Judge Judy's gaze cut to her like a blade. "You do not decide the seriousness of damage you caused." The girl's smirk faltered again. "Continue," Judy told the plaintiff. The woman swallowed. "She knocked over 3 of our displays. She said she didn't care. She said—" "We will get to what she said," Judy interjected, raising a hand. The daughter's jaw locked. Judge Judy tapped her pen once, slowly. "Because your story," she said, eyes fixed on the girl, "is about to fall apart." The room stilled as Judge Judy lifted the thin beige folder, the kind of folder that never appeared unless someone had already lied. The daughter's perfume lingered in the air, sweet and expensive, but suddenly it smelled like cover-up. Judge Judy opened the folder with a slow, practiced motion, the paper whispering like a warning. She did not rush. She let the silence work, let the daughter feel every second of it. The politician's daughter shifted her weight from one designer heel to the other, her polished confidence starting to wobble. "Let us examine something simple," Judy said, sliding a document into the light. "This is your payroll record." The daughter blinked. "My what?" "Your payroll record, or should I say, your lack of one." A murmur rolled through the audience like a quiet wave. The daughter's breath hitched, just barely. She glanced at her lawyer, but he stared straight ahead, jaw tight, the universal expression of a man watching his client sabotage herself. Judge Judy continued. "According to this, you have not held employment for—" She tapped the page. 18 months. "That is not—" "It is," Judy interrupted, sharp as a snapped thread. The daughter straightened her blazer. "I have responsibilities. My father's work requires—" "No," Judy said again. "Your father's work is your father's work. I am asking about your work." The daughter fell silent, lips tightening. Judge Judy let the moment settle before adding, "You told this court you could not pay for the damages because you were between jobs. That was not true." Her gaze locked on the girl, steady, unblinking. "This is the first crack in your story." The daughter inhaled sharply, as if she had just realized she was standing on a stage without a script. Across the room, the plaintiff's eyes softened, not with sympathy, but with clarity. She had suspected entitlement, but she had not expected this level of fabrication. Judge Judy turned to the plaintiff. "Continue with what occurred at the luncheon." The plaintiff nodded gently. "She walked in with her friends. They started pointing at the decor, laughing at how cheap everything looked. I asked them to be careful near the flower stands. She said it wasn't her problem," Judy finished, because the witness statements made that part abundantly clear. The daughter turned red. "People exaggerate. It was a crowded room. Things spill." Judy lifted an eyebrow. "Flowers spill?" A few people in the gallery tried to hide their smiles, but then the tone shifted. Judge Judy reached into the folder again, pulling out a signed witness statement from the event staff. The daughter's throat tightened visibly. This, Judy said, holding it up, is from someone who watched your every word. The girl's bracelet slid down her wrist as her arm dropped slightly, a small, involuntary surrender. You mocked the plaintiff, Judy said. Repeatedly. That's not true, the daughter snapped, but her voice trembled. Judge Judy closed the folder with a decisive thud. We are done pretending your perfume-colored version of events is accurate. A hush spread through the courtroom. Judy looked toward the side door. Bring in the staff witness, she ordered. The daughter's breath caught because she knew exactly who was about to walk in. The side door opened with a quiet click, but the effect was thunderous. The staff witness stepped inside, and the daughter's spine stiffened as if someone had just turned the temperature down 10 degrees. He walked with the careful posture of someone who had debated long and hard before agreeing to testify. His uniform shirt was crisp, pressed, almost too formal for the setting, but his eyes, steady, unwavering, held the kind of truth that did not need decoration. Judge Judy gestured him forward. State your name for the record. He did, voice level, hands clasped behind his back. He avoided looking at the daughter at first, but when he finally did, she looked away so quickly the movement almost seemed like a flinch. Judy rested her elbows on the bench. You were staff at the luncheon. Yes, Your Honor. And did you witness the defendant interacting with the plaintiff? A pause, a breath, then, yes. The daughter let out a faint scoff, a brittle sound, thin as glass. Her lawyer subtly shook his head, signaling her to stop. She didn't. Judge Judy turned her attention to the witness. Tell me exactly what you saw. He nodded once, gathering himself. She walked in late with two friends. They were loud, laughing, pointing at the decorations, at the food, at the serving staff. His voice did not sharpen. It softened, as if the memory itself carried weight. They treated everything like a joke. The daughter's eyes widened, a silent plea for him to stop. He didn't. She approached the plaintiff, inspected the centerpiece, and said it looked cheap. When the plaintiff explained it was handcrafted, she laughed loudly. Then she said anyone who brought bargain bin decor deserved it if things got broken. The gallery shifted. Even the bailiff's jaw tightened for a moment before returning to neutral. The daughter tried to laugh it off. Oh, come on, it wasn't. Judge Judy cut her off with a single raised finger. That alone silenced her. The witness continued. After she knocked over the display, intentionally or not, she said, Relax. I'll have my dad fix it. He owns the room. His gaze dropped. We all heard it. The defendant's face drained. Her father did not own the room. He didn't even sponsor the event. The lie was pure entitlement. Judge Judy leaned back, her expression unreadable. Anything else? A beat. The witness hesitated. Yes, he said quietly. After the plaintiff tried to clean up the mess, the defendant said something cruel about the plaintiff's son. The plaintiff stiffened. The daughter froze. But the witness didn't say the words. Not yet. His eyes flicked toward the plaintiff with something like apology. Judge Judy sensed the shift. She knew there was more. Something raw, something the girl had hoped would never surface. She leaned forward. What exactly did she say? The witness opened his mouth but faltered, not out of doubt, but out of respect for the pain the truth would cause. The daughter's hands began to tremble. Judge Judy turned to the plaintiff. Tell her, she said quietly, what she forgot to mention. And the daughter's breath shuddered, because she knew which moment was coming next. The plaintiff rose slowly, as if lifting the weight of a memory she had never wanted to speak aloud. Across from her, the politician's daughter stopped breathing, because this was the secret she prayed no one would repeat. The courtroom shifted into a deeper silence, one that did not simply quiet conversation, but tightened throats. The plaintiff's hands trembled, not from fear of the judge, but from the ache of reliving a moment that had carved itself into her family. She held her purse close, the way people hold on to something that steadies them when truth becomes too heavy. Judge Judy nodded gently. Take your time. The plaintiff swallowed hard. My son was with me at the luncheon, she said. Her voice was soft, almost apologetic, as though she wished she did not have to drag him into the room with her words alone. He had never been to an event like that before. He was excited, nervous. The daughter stared at the floor, shoulders tightening, jaw locked. The plaintiff continued, eyes glistening. He has autism, high functioning, but crowds overwhelm him. I told him he could stay by the dessert table where it was quiet. A stir moved through the gallery, sympathetic, protective. The daughter's lawyer placed a hand on her arm, but she pulled away. She always pulled away when consequences approached. The plaintiff pressed her lips together, steadying herself. When the display got knocked over, my son came over because he thought I was hurt, and she looked right at him. Her voice cracked, then steadied again through sheer will. And she said, "Get him away from me. He is weird. He's freaking people out." The air left the room. Even the cameras seemed to stop humming. Judge Judy went still, a stillness sharper than any shout. The witness closed his eyes, validating every word without speaking. The daughter's face lost all color. She opened her mouth, but no sound emerged. Not denial, not apology, nothing. The plaintiff's breath shook. He hurt her. He asked me on the drive home if he was wrong, if he was embarrassing. A tear slipped down her cheek, but she didn't wipe it. She let it fall because it was part of the truth. The daughter finally whispered, I didn't mean." Judge Judy's voice cut through the air like a clean blade. "You did not mean for it to come back to haunt you. That is different." The daughter flinched. "You mocked a child," Judy said, her tone steady but colder than it had been the entire hearing. "Not the catering, not the decor, a child." The daughter's breath came shallow and quick, as if her own arrogance were suffocating her now that it had nowhere left to hide. The plaintiff looked down at her hands as if saying it aloud had emptied something she had carried alone for too long. Judge Judy folded her hands. "We will address the property damage, but understand something clearly. Today is not just about broken decorations." The daughter swallowed, but it did nothing to steady her. Judge Judy leaned in, voice colder than ice. "Now," she said, "let us discuss what consequences actually look like." And the daughter finally understood she had lost control. The politician's daughter tried to speak, but her voice broke before the first excuse could form. Arrogance had carried her into the courtroom, but fear was dragging her down now. For the first time since the hearing began, she looked small, not because she lacked the expensive armor she had walked in with, the gold, the designer fabrics, the polished hair, but because something inside her had cracked open, and the room felt it. The audience leaned forward. The plaintiff held her breath. Even the bailiff, carved from routine discipline, shifted his stance. The daughter tried again. It was a misunderstanding." Judge Judy's eyebrow lifted with a precision that could carve marble. "A misunderstanding," she repeated, slow and measured. "You called a child weird and freaking people out. That is not a misunderstanding. That is cruelty." The daughter's chin quivered. "I didn't know that he had. Disability is not what makes someone worthy of respect," Judy snapped. "Humanity does." The girl flinched. Her hand moved to her bracelet, fingers trembling against the cold metal. Her lawyer whispered urgently, telling her to stop talking, but she shook him off. Pride, or panic, would not let her stay silent now. She forced a breath. "I was stressed. The event, the noise, the cameras. I shouldn't have said it." The plaintiff closed her eyes for a moment, as if hearing the words didn't heal anything. It only confirmed how deeply they'd been meant. Judge Judy leaned back slightly. "Your stress is not an explanation. It is an excuse, and a poor one." A ripple of murmurs washed through the gallery. The daughter's desperation sharpened. "My father." "We are not discussing your father," Judy said, cutting the words clean from the air. "We are discussing your behavior." Her voice remained calm, but the daughter reacted as if Judy had shouted. She swallowed hard, eyes darting as though searching for something, a loophole, an ally, a microphone that would save her. There was none. "I didn't mean to hurt the boy," she whispered. "You meant to hurt someone," Judy replied. "You aimed at the closest target because you believed you could." The daughter shuddered. The plaintiff finally spoke, voice gentle but fractured. "My son cried that night. He asked why some people act like kindness is beneath them." The daughter covered her mouth with her hand, shoulders shaking once, a crack, small but honest. For a moment, her privilege couldn't protect her. For a moment, she looked human. Judge Judy watched carefully, not moved, not softened, but evaluating the difference between performance and regret. "Tell me something," Judy said quietly. If today had gone your way, if none of these witnesses had come forward, would you be sorry right now? The daughter froze. That was the question she couldn't dodge. Judy let the silence expand, turning the courtroom into a mirror the girl could not escape. Why? The judge asked. Were you laughing today? And the daughter's eyes widened because she had no safe answer. If you were sitting in that courtroom, would you remain silent or speak up? Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. Not confidence, not excuses, not the polished arrogance she'd worn like perfume. The question hung in the air. Why were you laughing? The daughter's hands clutched the edge of her blazer as if gripping fabric could anchor her to a version of herself that still felt safe. But safety was gone. Judge Judy's question lingered, sharp and echoing, turning the silence into a weight she could not lift. She tried again. I wasn't laughing at them. Then at what? Judy asked. Her voice was quiet, but it carried the kind of pressure that made the daughter's breath come unsteady. The courtroom watched her unravel in real time, not from shouting, not from accusation, but from truth, peeling back every layer of the facade she'd built. The daughter's gaze flicked to the gallery, searching for something familiar, someone who might defend her. No one moved, not even her lawyer, who stared straight ahead like a man preparing for impact. Her voice shrank to a whisper. I laughed because it all felt ridiculous. The plaintiff stiffened. Judge Judy did not blink. Ridiculous, she repeated. A courtroom, a child you insulted, a mother seeking accountability. That is what you considered ridiculous? The daughter's breath hitched. I didn't mean you did, Judy said. You absolutely did. Her tone wasn't cruel. It was factual. And facts, delivered quietly, often cut the deepest. The daughter's shoulders sagged. The bracelet on her wrist slid down again, soft and metallic, a tiny symbol of a life built on shine instead of substance. She tried once more, voice cracking. I thought none of this would matter, that it would be fine. The plaintiff blinked, hurt softening into something heavier, a kind of sorrow for a girl who had never learned what humility looked like. Judge Judy steepled her fingers. Tell me why you thought that. Silence tightened again. The daughter hesitated, not because she was searching for an answer, but because she already knew it and hated it. Because people always let me get away with things, she whispered. The words came out small, like a confession dragged from somewhere she'd buried. They don't question me. The gallery reacted, not with shock, but with recognition. Everyone had seen versions of this before. Judge Judy leaned in. But I am not people, and this courtroom is not your father's fundraiser. The daughter's eyes filled. Not a dramatic cry, something quieter, more alarming, an unraveling. Her lawyer suddenly placed a hand on her elbow, guiding her to stop, but she pulled away. For the first time, she did not want someone else speaking for her, or perhaps she simply realized no one could. The plaintiff wiped a tear, not for the defendant, but for her son. For every moment he'd carried that insult without knowing it would someday be spoken aloud here. Then the courtroom door opened. A clerk stepped inside, holding an envelope, thick, sealed, official. He walked it to the bench with steady steps. Judge Judy took it. The daughter's breath caught. She knew that kind of envelope. Everyone in politics did. Judy slid a finger beneath the seal. This, she said, was submitted moments ago, and the daughter's last trace of color vanished. Judge Judy broke the seal with a soft tear that sounded louder than the daughter's breathing. The envelope opened like a door, and whatever stood on the other side was about to decide who held power now. Judy slid the papers out with slow, deliberate movements. She did not rush. She didn't need to. The suspense did the walking for her. The gallery leaned in as if drawn forward by gravity, the kind created when truth finally steps into the light. The daughter's fingers curled inward. Her posture shrank. Her lawyer leaned toward her, whispering frantically, but she didn't turn to him this time. She stared at Judy, eyes wide, glossy, frightened, as though hoping sheer willpower could stop whatever was coming. It couldn't. Judge Judy read the first page silently. Her expression didn't change, but the room felt it when her breath deepened slightly, that subtle inhale she only took when something important had arrived. Then she set the page down. "This," she said, tapping it with one calm finger, "is a witness statement from another guest at the luncheon." The daughter's stomach dropped. She knew exactly whose name might be on that paper, and which lie was about to surface next. Judy continued, her voice steady. "According to this witness, the defendant did not simply knock over the display." A pause. "She pushed it, intentionally." A ripple of shock moved through the audience, not loud but unmistakable. The daughter shook her head silently at first, then found her voice. "That's not true. I tripped. I was wearing heels." Judy lifted a hand. "The statement says you laughed afterward and said, 'Oops, sorry. Hope you have insurance.'" The daughter's face twisted, not in anger this time, but in something that looked like dread. Even her lawyer exhaled heavily, head dropping as if he'd been waiting for this moment all along. Judge Judy continued reading. "The witness also states that you bragged about not needing to worry about the cost because, and I quote, 'Daddy makes problems disappear.'" Gasps, a low, murmuring disbelief. The courtroom felt suddenly smaller, as if the walls were closing in on the lie that had built the daughter's confidence from the start. The daughter's voice trembled. "People exaggerate. They misunderstand things." Judy looked at her over the rim of her glasses. 3 different witnesses have now described the same pattern of behavior. They are not misunderstanding. They are observing. The plaintiff stared at the floor, tears welling not from anger now but exhaustion, the exhaustion of being dismissed by someone who had never understood what real consequences felt like. The daughter's bracelet slid down her wrist again. This time she didn't push it back. Her hand shook too much. Judge Judy placed the papers aside. "Based on this new statement," she said, "we will need to examine the additional evidence submitted with it." She nodded to the clerk. The clerk retrieved a small flash drive. The daughter's eyes widened, a full, raw panic blooming across her face. Judge Judy held the drive between her fingers like a key to a door no one wanted opened. "This," she said, "contains video footage taken by that same witness." A silence like a held breath swept across the room. Judy set the drive down, the click echoing like a verdict already forming. "We will review it next," she said calmly, and for the first time, the daughter looked genuinely terrified of the truth she had created. The lights dimmed just enough for the screen to glow in cold, bluish light, and in that glow, the daughter's face appeared, younger, sharper, unguarded, and nothing like the girl shaking at the defendant's table now. The courtroom rustled as the video clicked into focus. Judge Judy sat still as stone, her expression unreadable, her hands folded like she had been waiting for this moment since the hearing began. The plaintiff clutched her purse tighter. The daughter, pale and motionless, stared at the screen as if hoping it might blink away before anyone else saw it. It didn't. The audio came first. Laughter. Her laughter. Not the forced, brittle laugh from earlier. This was real, careless, full. The kind of laugh people use when they believe they are untouchable. Then the image sharpened. The daughter standing near the dessert table, a drink in hand, waving her manicured fingers dismissively as she spoke to her friends. "Look at her," video her said, gesturing toward the plaintiff. "She's acting like this is a real event. It's a charity thing, not a coronation." One of her friends laughed nervously. The real daughter squeezed her eyes shut. The witness behind the camera remained silent on the footage, but it was clear he'd been close enough to capture every word. Then the moment arrived, the one the plaintiff had never fully spoken of in detail. The plaintiff's son stepped into frame, slightly overwhelmed by the crowd. He tapped the dessert table once, grounding himself. Video her sneered, "Oh my God, don't let him touch anything. Seriously, he's weird. Get him away from me." The real courtroom gasped, not loud but unified, a single breath of disbelief and disapproval. The plaintiff's hand flew to her mouth. Tears slipped through her fingers silently. She wasn't crying for herself. She was crying for the boy who had been brave enough to stand beside her that day. The daughter on video tossed her hair, completely unaware she was being recorded. "I swear, people like that ruin the aesthetic." Judge Judy paused the video. Silence slammed into the room like an unseen door. The daughter opened her mouth, but no explanation lived there anymore. Her excuses had run out. Her performance had run out. Only truth remained, ugly, undeniable, captured in perfect clarity. Judge Judy did not raise her voice. She didn't even lean forward. She simply said, "That was not an accident. That was intention." The daughter nodded once, barely, but enough. Judy pressed play again. The footage showed the moment she knocked over the floral display, not a stumble, not a slip. Her hand pushed it, deliberately. She laughed as it fell, and the camera captured everything. When the video ended, the room didn't move. Not a breath, not a whisper. Judge Judy let the silence stretch until it felt like the air itself was judging her. "Do you wish to change any part of your testimony now?" Judy asked. The daughter couldn't answer. Tears fell, but they weren't persuasive tears. They were the tears of someone confronting the truth for the first time. She whispered, "That shouldn't have been recorded." Judy's eyes narrowed. But it was, and the next question waiting for her would decide everything. Do you think remorse should ever erase guilt, or does justice demand accountability first? Tears brimmed in her eyes, but Judge Judy didn't move. She needed to know if they were tears of remorse or tears of exposure. The daughter stood alone in a silence that was no longer her shield, but her sentence. The daughter tried to inhale, but her breath hitched halfway, trapped between panic and pride. She wiped at her cheek as if embarrassed that anyone could see her cry, as if the tears betrayed everything she'd spent years learning to hide behind jewelry, posture, and her father's shadow. Judge Judy watched carefully, her gaze sharp but not unkind. "Are you crying?" she asked quietly. "Because you hurt someone, or because you've been caught?" The courtroom didn't shift. It froze. The daughter opened her mouth, and the answer didn't come. Not immediately. Her throat worked around a sob she tried to swallow, her hand covering her lips as if holding in the truth might still save her. "I didn't know he had," she began. "No," Judy cut in. "Do not finish that sentence. His diagnosis is not an excuse for your behavior. If he had no diagnosis at all, your words would still be cruel." The daughter's shoulders crumpled slightly, the first sign of someone realizing the ground beneath her had been carefully paved by her own choices. The plaintiff stepped closer, voice soft but steady. "My son asked me why someone like you would say something like that. I didn't have an answer for him." The daughter's tears fell harder now, not dramatic, not performative, smaller, quieter, human, the kind that happen when a person sees themselves without the filters they've depended on. "I never meant it to go that far," she whispered, staring at the floor. "Then why," Judy asked, "did you keep doubling down today, even before the witnesses, before the video? Why did you laugh?" The daughter shut her eyes, as if the question struck something raw. "Because I thought it wouldn't matter. People always tell me it won't matter, that people won't push back, that I don't have to think before I speak." The lawyer beside her exhaled, shoulders sinking, the quiet resignation of someone who'd seen the truth finally surface. Judge Judy leaned forward. "You're not in a bubble right now. You're in a courtroom." The daughter nodded, wiping her nose with the back of her hand. Every movement looked unpolished now. No more political composure, no rehearsed poise. Just a young woman confronting her own reflection held up by strangers. "But I didn't want to hurt him," she said, her voice cracking. "I didn't. I just wasn't thinking." "That," Judy said, "is the problem." The plaintiff looked at her, not angry now, but tired of excuses, tired of entitlement, tired of her son carrying a wound carved by a stranger's careless words. The daughter looked back, meeting the plaintiff's eyes for the first time without defiance. Her voice shrank. "I'm sorry." The words floated in the air, fragile, incomplete, uncertain. Judge Judy tilted her head. "Are you sorry for him, or sorry for yourself?" The daughter hesitated. Judy's gaze sharpened. "Because your answer to that question," she said, "will determine what happens next." And the daughter realized she wasn't at the end. She was at the beginning of consequences she never planned for. Judge Judy waited, not for an apology, but for the truth. And under that silence, something inside the politician's daughter finally cracked open, not with defiance, but with a tremor. The daughter's breath faltered, trembling like a structure losing its foundation. She stared at her trembling hands, realizing for the first time that there was nowhere left to hide, no jewelry, no image, no privilege thick enough to shield her from a question she had never been asked honestly. "Why do you act this way?" Her first attempt at an answer dissolved into the air. Her voice broke before any words formed. She swallowed, eyes dropping to the courtroom floor as though the truth lived somewhere down there, buried beneath years of rehearsed confidence. Judge Judy softened her tone, not by becoming gentle but by removing every ounce of judgment from her voice. "When did you learn," she asked, "to treat people like they were beneath you?" The question pierced deeper than accusation. The daughter blinked rapidly, fighting the instinct to lift her chin and pretend none of this mattered. That instinct, the one shaped by politics, performance, public expectations, had guided her entire life. But now it only made her feel hollow. Finally, the truth slipped out, small, shaking. "My father," she whispered. The courtroom shifted, not with sympathy, with recognition, because everyone knew the shadow she lived in, even without hearing his name. Judge Judy didn't react. "Explain." The daughter's jaw trembled. He tells me all the time that weakness destroys people in our position, that I have to be above things, above people, that if I ever show softness, I'll be eaten alive." The words hung in the air like a confession from someone who'd been trained, not taught. She squeezed her eyes shut. "He says I'm nothing if I don't act like I deserve the room." The plaintiff inhaled sharply, not out of pity for the daughter, but in grief for the cycle of cruelty people pass on without even knowing it. The daughter continued, voice breaking in stages. "When I was younger, if I ever cried or made a mistake, he'd say, 'Fix your face. Do you want to embarrass me?' And I got used to acting like I didn't care about anything, about anyone." A tear slipped down her cheek, not dramatic, not manipulative, quiet, honest. "I thought if I acted above everyone, no one could hurt me first." There it was, the real twist, the truth beneath the cruelty. Judge Judy breathed in slowly, not softening, but understanding the map of the girl's damage. "And so," she said quietly, "you hurt others before they could hurt you." The daughter nodded, a single helpless movement, as if admitting it made her smaller but lighter all at once. The courtroom remained still. Even the bailiff's posture slackened slightly, as though the revelation shifted the emotional pressure in the room. The plaintiff stood silently, torn between resentment and a reluctant sense of clarity. Not forgiveness, not yet, but understanding of the wound beneath the wound. Judge Judy leaned forward, expression steady. "Your father may have taught you arrogance," she said, "but he did not teach you accountability." The daughter met Judy's eyes, really met them, without deflection, without defense. "He never taught me how to be wrong," she whispered. Judy steepled her fingers. "And today," she said, "you will learn." And the entire courtroom braced for the consequences that would finally follow truth. The truth still hung in the courtroom like dust suspended in sunlight, visible, fragile, impossible to ignore. And in that suspended quiet, the daughter finally looked like someone who had nowhere left to run. Judge Judy didn't speak at first. She let the room breathe, let the revelation settle into the walls, let the daughter sit with the rawness of her own admission, the kind that doesn't feel like release, but exposure. The politician's daughter sat trembling in her chair, wiping tears with the heel of her palm, the makeup she'd carefully applied, now streaking down her cheeks in uneven lines. She didn't fix it. She didn't dare. For the first time all day, image wasn't the priority. Survival was. The plaintiff stood a few feet away, hands clasped together, her expression conflicted. She had come here for justice, for accountability, for her son. She had not expected to watch the defendant crumble under the weight of her own upbringing. It didn't erase the hurt, but it complicated the shape of it. Even the audience seemed unsure how to feel. The shift from anger to stunned silence had created a strange, delicate atmosphere, one where judgment still hovered, but empathy lingered at the edges like a shadow not fully formed. Judge Judy finally leaned forward. "Understanding your past," she said calmly, "does not excuse your present." The daughter nodded, barely lifting her eyes. "I know." Her voice was small, the voice of someone who had run out of shields and found nothing beneath them except the truth she'd never wanted to face. The courtroom lights reflected off her bracelet, but even it looked dimmer now, as though the shine had dulled under reality's weight. Pain that is taught, Judy continued, is still pain, but passing it on makes you responsible. The daughter swallowed, her throat tight. I didn't mean to become like him. Judy's gaze softened just a fraction, not sympathy, but recognition. Most people who grow up in the shadow of pressure don't intend to repeat it, but intention does not erase impact. The plaintiff slowly nodded. Not agreement, not forgiveness, just truth. Judge Judy turned to her. Would you like to speak? The plaintiff hesitated before stepping forward. I don't forgive what she did, she said gently, voice trembling. But I understand. More than I did before. That doesn't take away what my son felt. But it explains why she said it. The daughter covered her face with both hands, not crying now, just overwhelmed. Tiny, sharp breaths broke through her fingers. A girl raised for perfection, now drowning in imperfection. Judge Judy allowed the silence to envelop them again. We still have to address damages, she finally said. The plaintiff handed over the final report, the thick packet summarizing every shattered item, every ruined centerpiece, every hour of labor lost. It hit the desk with a soft weight that felt heavier than its pages. The daughter looked up, eyes wide with a realization too late to change anything. She had never known the full cost, not of the decor or the event or her words. She leaned forward. I didn't realize how much. Judy held up a hand. Realization is the first step. Accountability is the next. She opened the report, scanning the totals. We will address these numbers now, Judy said, and you will hear every one of them. The damage report lay open between them like a quiet accusation. Numbers didn't cry, didn't argue, didn't tremble. They simply revealed the truth without mercy. Judge Judy turned the first page slowly, the paper making a soft shh sound that echoed in the courtroom's thick silence. The daughter flinched at every turn, as if each page were a new verdict, a new mirror showing her something she wanted desperately to unsee. Let's begin, Judy said, her voice firm but not cruel. The plaintiff stood still, hands clasped, breathing carefully, each breath a reminder of how long she'd endured this, how much she'd carried alone. Judy read the first line. Replacement cost for the floral centerpiece, $480? The daughter's eyes widened. For flowers. No, Judy corrected, for craftsmanship. The plaintiff's cheeks reddened, not from embarrassment, but from memory. I spent 3 nights handcrafting those. My son helped glue the petals. The daughter's expression crumbled again. Judy continued, destroyed dessert trays, $326. Damaged linens, $190. Glassware shattered, $214. Each number landed with its own weight, like stones dropping one by one into the hollow space where the daughter's confidence used to live. But the final page was the heaviest. Lost labor hours, event penalties, and emergency replacement fees, Judy read, total an additional $1,760. The daughter gasped, an instinctive, unfiltered sound. Her lawyer pinched the bridge of his nose, preparing himself for the collapse he knew was coming. But Judy wasn't finished. That brings the total damage, she said, tapping the bottom line, to $2,975. The daughter stared at the number, jaw trembling. She had brought handbags to the courtroom worth more than that, watches worth more than that, shoes worth more than that. But she had never imagined the cost of her carelessness, not until it stared back at her in black and white. The plaintiff finally spoke, her voice quiet but resolute. I covered everything myself. I didn't want the charity to suffer. I couldn't let them think my business had failed them. The daughter's eyes filled. I had no idea. Judy's expression didn't change. Because you never asked. That broke her. Tears spilled, not loud, not dramatic, just steady. A girl raised to live above the world, finally feeling the gravitational pull of responsibility. I didn't think it mattered, she whispered. It mattered, the plaintiff replied softly. To me, to my son, to everyone who worked that night. The daughter pressed her palms to her eyes, breathing in little gasps that shook her shoulders. For the first time, there was no denial left in her, no shield, no performance, only consequence. Judge Judy closed the report. The sound was final. This is the cost of your actions, she said. Financially, emotionally, professionally. And you will address all of it. The daughter nodded shakily, a nod of surrender, not defeat. Judy folded her hands. But before I decide your repayment, she said, there is one more thing you need to hear. And the daughter looked up, terrified of what truth might come next. The daughter sat frozen, as if any movement might shatter the fragile balance holding her together. Judge Judy's voice softened, not with warmth, but with truth sharpened by experience. The courtroom felt different now, not tense, not chaotic, but heavy. The air had thickened with everything that had been said, everything that had been revealed, everything that had finally come loose from the defendant's carefully built facade. The audience watched her as though she were no longer the villain of the story, but the inevitable product of one. Judge Judy cleared her throat gently. There is something you need to understand, she began. The daughter looked up through wet, exhausted eyes. This case stopped being about money a long time ago. The plaintiff nodded faintly, as if agreeing without wanting to agree. Judy continued. This has become a case about character, yours. Who you are without an audience, without a father's influence, without the shield of entitlement. Each word landed like its own verdict. The daughter swallowed hard, tears spilling again, not in dramatic waves, but in slow, steady drops she couldn't hold back anymore. I never wanted to be like him, she whispered. I didn't want to hurt anyone. Judy's gaze softened just slightly. Intent does not erase impact. You cannot undo the words you said to that boy. You cannot unbreak the things you broke, but you can decide what kind of person you become after this moment. The daughter nodded, trembling. The plaintiff stepped forward, voice quiet but resolute. I don't expect you to change overnight. I don't expect a miracle. I just want to know my son won't carry this hurt forever. The daughter covered her face, shoulders shaking, her bracelet clinking softly against the desk. It was the first time her jewelry didn't look like status. It looked like weight. Judge Judy leaned back, observing the girl closely. This, she said, gesturing at her, at the mess, the tears, the collapsed defenses, is what happens when arrogance finally meets accountability. The daughter exhaled a broken breath. I'm sorry, she whispered. For what I said, for what I did, for thinking I was above all of this. I'm sorry. The plaintiff stared at her for a long moment. Then she nodded, slowly, gently. Not in forgiveness, but in acknowledgement. Judge Judy's tone shifted again, regaining that steel that defined her judgment. Apology is the first step, but responsibility must follow. The daughter lifted her head. Whatever you decide, I'll accept it. For the first time, her voice carried no entitlement, no pretense, just resignation and a faint fragile hope that maybe consequences could shape her into someone better than what she'd been taught. Judge Judy folded her hands. Then listen carefully. The courtroom leaned forward. Even the air felt still, bracing itself. Your actions had financial impact, emotional impact, and reputational impact, and your consequences will reflect all three. The daughter's breath caught in her throat. Judy lifted the gavel just slightly. Here is what justice looks like today, she said, and the room held its breath for the final blow. Before the verdict drops, do you believe people truly change, or only after they are exposed? The gavel hovered in Judge Judy's hand, suspended like a final heartbeat before consequence. Every eye fixed on her, even the daughter's, red and exhausted, bracing for the impact she could no longer outrun. Judge Judy lowered the gavel slowly, not striking it yet, but letting it hover above the polished wood like a promise. The court has heard the testimony, the witnesses, the footage. Her gaze shifted toward the daughter, who sat perfectly still. Hands folded like a child waiting for a lesson she already knew the answer to. And now, Judy continued, we address accountability. The plaintiff's breath trembled. The daughter's lawyer closed his folder, resigned. The daughter, stripped of her previous armor, simply nodded. Judge Judy began with the cold, simple math. You will repay the full $2,975 in damages, she said, voice steady, not because the plaintiff demands it, but because justice requires it. The daughter nodded again, barely whispering, Yes, Your Honor. But that, Judy added, is only the financial part. The daughter's eyes lifted, cautious, scared, but open. You will also write a formal apology to the plaintiff and her son, not a prepared statement, not a political gesture, a real apology, acknowledging every choice that brought us here. The daughter swallowed hard, tears rising again. I will. And, Judy continued, you will complete 50 hours of community service with the charity whose event you disrupted. A small murmur swept the gallery. Approval, surprise, maybe even hope. Judy's tone remained firm. Humility is not something you learn from punishment alone. It is learned through service, through doing the work you once mocked. The daughter exhaled, shaky but sincere. I understand. Judge Judy paused, letting the weight of the moment settle. One last thing. The daughter's breath caught. You will meet with the plaintiff's son, supervised, not to apologize, but to listen, to understand how your words landed. That meeting will be scheduled at the discretion of the plaintiff. The plaintiff's eyes widened. She hadn't expected that, neither had the daughter. But something shifted between them, a fragile thread of human recognition, thin as silk but present. Judge Judy finally set the gavel down. Not a strike, not yet. Instead, she spoke with a softer gravity. You cannot control who raised you, she said. You cannot control the lessons you were taught, but you can decide who you become from this moment forward. The daughter nodded, tears falling freely, not in self-pity now, but in acceptance. For the first time, Judy added, I believe you understand that. The daughter let out a trembling breath, almost a release, then, crack. The gavel struck. The sound wasn't loud, but it echoed through every corner of the courtroom, through the marble floors, through the gallery's silence, through the daughter's chest. Case closed. A stillness followed deeper than before, not fearful, not angry, just human. The plaintiff placed a hand over her heart, exhaling slowly. The daughter dabbed at her cheeks, humbled in a way she had never allowed herself to be. And Judge Judy watched them both, not victorious but resolute, because justice had not come from punishment alone, it had come from truth. Arrogance collapses quickly under truth, but humility grows slowly in the quiet after the gavel falls.